show. I'm Lily Morgan, and I'm joined by Dale Matthews and Mike Jones. Hello, gentlemen.
Wow, you have changed since the last time I saw you, Lily. Yes.
Not as good looking anymore. Okay,
Yes.
sorry about that. So, right, we do have Lily Morgan with us, and Lily Morgan is currently a city councilor for the city of Grants Pass, and she's aspiring to leave that non-paid job and go to work for the county in a slightly different way. She'd like to be a county commissioner. Have I got that about right, Lily?
Yes, you do. It's a big step. It's a scary step for me to change a career that I've been pursuing for over 20 years now, but I believe it's the right step to take.
So tell us what it is that you do, Lily, please.
I work in the parole and probation department as a certified parole officer, so I'm a peace officer, but I am the supervisor of half of the parole officers. So mostly in the office these days, approving reports and overseeing decisions that are made in the office.
I think that some people don't know that Jim Goodwin works for the county and he's a city councilor. You work for the county and you're city councilor. And, well, everybody on the Grants Pass City Council works for the county and is a Grants, well, not quite right, but close. Okay.
Yeah, Jim does work for the juvenile department as their director, so he's down the street.
Right, so right. You'll be leaving the position that you're in now if you do get elected as a county commissioner then.
That's correct.
Well, you'll be leaving that position whether you get elected or not, correct?
No, I do not have to leave as far as my paying parole and probation job, I am not required to step down unless I get elected, so in January 2017 is when that transition would happen. So in the meantime, I have to be intentional to keep very clear boundaries of work and campaign.
Well, I meant the primary that's coming up in 6 months. Have you made your decision and it's final, or are you going to make a different decision about politics depending on how things go in the primary?
I don't know if I understand what you're asking specifically. I have filed for the county commissioner job, and I'm hoping to make it through the primary through to the general election in November.
Of course you do. You wouldn't be a good candidate if you didn't. Right, but, right.
I am pursuing county at this point and not further with the city.
Let's talk a little. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just wondering, what's your philosophy here? What's bringing you? What's driving you to seek the commissioner position?
Well, I've always been somebody who wants to step up when I see that there's a need of leadership. And one of the things that's been a challenge when I got into city council is there was extreme distrust in where the city was at that time. We had just come through the recall. Everything was in a state of not disarray, but it really was a little chaotic. And I believe that we have to, as citizens that live here, we have to step up and take part and try to contribute what we can towards the health of our community. And so that's what started with city council. I feel that we have not got it always right, but we have built some trust back into that role. I'd like to try with the county. I can only be who I am, and that's somebody who tries to live with integrity and be as honest as I can, whether it's a good decision or not. I want to be able to listen to what the people are saying and respond and try to be available to that. So
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dale.
I was going to say
that
I was simply going to say, that there's a little lag in the show. There usually is, introduced by Mike in many ways.
Yes.
So, would you say that there's, like a fire in your belly, or are you like living in a house where all the clocks have stopped? What's motivating?
Wow. Okay.
Honestly, I just haven't got a AA battery to replace that one yet, and I like it.
Things are tight. Things are tight on the county payroll there.
Life happens sometimes. There's other things that take more priority, and so when it comes to what I choose to do throughout the day, it's usually the clock's the last thing of the day.
Oh, listen, I have 2 stopped clocks in my house, so I'm one to talk.
Well, and at home, I'm intentional. I have an atomic clock, so it's always set correct no
Ah.
matter what is going on. So that helps out. And as far as the county commissioner role, yes, I really believe that our county is a pretty amazing place to live. We are the most diverse place in Oregon, as far as I can tell. That we have um, rural, we have organic farmers, we have rural and urban setting, we have people that are passionate about every extreme that we have. And but I was born and raised here. This has been my home. I went to a private school for a while in the county, and it was surrounded with county kids. And my grandparents lived in the county, and I grew up in the city, so I've had the experience of both here in Grants Pass. But it's my town. It's my home, and I care about what the outcome is. And we have to continue to be willing to step up and offer to serve. I still believe that even though politicians have a bad rap, we're still public servants, and that has to come first. One
Now
other
let's.
thing.
Go ahead. Go ahead. One other
One of the
thing.
questions you asked before, why to switch from county or city to county. One of the frustrations I have with city council is that we're an advisory board where the city manager is the administrator, and though I respect the city government and what's going on there, I really like being a better part of the decision and having more of an impact on the outcome. And right now, the county commissioners are the administrators, and they have the ability to impact change. Yes, they're still responding to the policies that are in place with the charter and the electorate, but you actually have the say to try to make better decisions. And so it would give a better opportunity. To me, that would be more fulfilling than just being in an advisory capacity that the city council is as a board.
Nicely put. This is a show about politics, the only one that we know of, where we're examining the trends and telling the news about local politics. And that being the case, it'd be remiss if we didn't at least ask about party backing and that kind of thing.
Sure.
So we do know that Keith Heck has decided to run, and Keith Heck is going to be running against Tony Webb. There's been some controversy about whether or not Cheryl Walker would run, but Cheryl Walker probably is not going to run because the Democrat Party is going to back you, isn't that right?
I don't know. Um, I am currently registered as a Republican,
You
and
are?
I am, have been since May. I was
Oh.
I was raised in a home that was very active in the Republican Party. My parents were precinct people when I was a kid. I remember in high school and the first Clinton election, I was one of the few that had um, essentially debated on the side of Bush at the time, and I went to college and was a part of the college Republicans my freshman year. I switched to the Democratic Party in the first President Obama election because Senator McCain was running unopposed in the primary, and I wanted to have a vote in the primary election, and so I switched candidacy at that time, and I was fascinated by the change in the emails I was getting. I've never been somebody who believes that you vote purely by a party line. I believe that you vote for the person, and if they represent you well, that should speak for itself. But the reality is that I I find myself somewhere in the middle. There's issues with both parties. There's strengths in both parties, but it was purely out of just convenience that I stayed with the Democrat. I switched for that primary election, and then it didn't seem to matter because I was able to vote in just about everything after that I cared about. And so it was earlier this year, a few months ago, I switched to the Republican Party. Mostly
The Democrat website still has you listed as a Democrat. You might want to talk to them.
They never asked me about putting me on their website. They did that purely on their own. As you know, City Council is a nonpartisan position, and so is the County Commissioner. But that was something they did on their own without my knowledge. So.
Well, you know what? You're right about the parties, especially on a local level, sort of blending together. Like you, kind of grew up as a conservative Republican, and my party left me, and so I just decided I'm going to become, independent or not party affiliated.
Yeah,
And
that didn't work out very well
no,
for either
actually,
one of us.
that is a fun story because, this is a good time to reiterate that, because people out there who think that you switched to the independent party.
No, wait. They think they're independent, but they were actually becoming part of the independent party.
Yeah,
I
right.
didn't know I was.
Yeah, right. So Dale and I were both registered as independents, and in reality, that's kind of a far left party in Oregon, and so you have to go in and make sure that your party affiliate is a very easy thing to do to get registered as not affiliated if you want to be, quote, independent.
Just one more note about that. I had actually gone in, I assume is similar to Mike, and said to Art Harvey personally, the county clerk, I would like to be an independent. Fine. Well, I ended up in the independent party, and I didn't even know there was such a thing. I wanted to be non-affiliated. You got to say it just right, because he's not going to ask you.
Yeah. What you need to do is just ask to be non-affiliated. But now you had mentioned the mistrust or distrust of the county commissioners.
I think it's county government in general that you hear the expression, and there's some things that carry on for years. People have distrust from years back decisions. You'll hear that all the time where people say, well, remember what they did when. And you can't fix the mistakes of the past, but you can try to be intentional about what you do today.
Right. So what would you do that's different than what they're doing now?
In general,
I can't say what each of them are individually doing. I don't speak with any of them on a regular basis. I probably have the most interaction with Commissioner Heck, as he's liaison to the department I work for, and I'm on the LADPC committee. And he's the liaison for that committee. And so I've had the opportunity to spend more time with him. I think even before that, as a parole officer, I've had many clients or offenders, per se, that lived at the mission. So when he was the director at the mission, I had gotten to know him there. So my intent is to not try to force anything on folks. But, we have this really hard balance where you have to be able to respond to state law and federal law regarding monies that come through the county. There's always this belief that we have more control over what we do, and there are some restrictions that
you mean than we actually do. Is that what you mean?
Well, yeah. I think that everybody in the public does not always realize how strict some of the limitations are on the funding sources.
Right.
And then on the ones that are not, where is our prioritization? What do we need to put forth as far as what people see as the biggest priority?
Absolutely.
And finding a way to find balance in that. And I'm going to take it to the current ballot right now that's on the November 3rd election. The county asked some advisory questions a few years ago. Overwhelmingly, the entire county said they would not want to see a sales tax. Yet we're seeing a sales tax. I don't know what information was out there that thought a sales tax would be popular, but our advisory said no. And so we have to be able to listen to what the voters are saying represents them. And that one, regardless of where people were, was pretty soundly no. We'll see if there's any difference in that on Tuesday. But
yeah, we sure will.
Right, and you know what? You came out very, very strongly against the sales tax in the city council meeting on the sales tax not long ago.
We have a piece of video.
We have the video from that.
Let's roll that bean footage.
Okay.
We can't say it's not a tax on the businesses, and here's why. Because Jay said it's not a legal requirement for the businesses to pass on the tax to the consumer. We're asking these businesses to take on the debt if they don't want to pass it on to their consumers. And though this does make sense, I went to college in Seattle. I understand sales tax. We were up in the 8 and 9% when I was up there. And I stayed living up there a couple years, working in the insurance industry before moving back to Oregon. And I would drive sometimes to Tacoma to get a lower sales tax rate of the same items if I was heading somewhere, because it was, it saved me a bit of money. And I'd buy multiple items because it was cheaper than the Seattle sales tax. That's ridiculous, but I did it because there was still something in the idea of it. We have a 77% retail. That's where we've ended up after our logging went away, after our construction boom industry went away. We have retail left. How do we support our local businesses? We have an economic development plan going on. We have a business advocate, or did at least. But what are they advocating for if it's a competition for businesses to be in existence here? Because if they don't have the ability in their profit margins to pass on the tax to their consumers, they have to eat it. I don't know about you guys, but we've been inundated from almost every business that's been long-term in this community saying, please don't do it. Please don't, as Colleen said, don't divide our community. As we're coming into busy season, as far as gearing up for Christmas, businesses need to be doing what they do best, and that's selling their stuff to the consumers that need to do it. We've had a couple of a heck of a years with the fires, with everything else that's gone on, that our retail industry has taken a hit the last couple of years. You add to it, now they have to have mandatory sick leave and health insurances. The businesses haven't realized everything that's an impact on their profit yet. And for us to turn around and say, businesses, now you need to eat this cost because it's not a legal requirement to put it on your receipt and pass it on to your consumers. We can say it's not a tax on the businesses, but essentially it is. And I think that we should not put this product forward simply for the sake of getting a poll out there. I've said it before, our city residents have passed additional property tax, but we've never asked them the question, would you respond to a sales tax? Instead of rushing into this, put it on the May ballot, but instead for this November, put a question to our city voters and say, would you support a sales tax? Let's ask the question before we implement something that we can't undo. We say we're for business, but at the same time, we're making the businesses, instead of getting ready for retail season, we're making them have to fight a battle of, will I even exist next year because of how close things are. I suggest we slow it down and do it right. Who says we can't do this in May and still look in the same time frames? Let's put the question to the voters instead of, would you support this, so we know where we're at, and not just guessing with random numbers pulled out of wherever we're at. It also gives us the chance to reach out to our business community and see what they could deal with, what they could respond to, have people on the task force or other groups that are going to be directly impacted by it, and not have this system be that, hey, this is all we can come up with, and we're instead losing the faith that we've built for the last 5 years. Slow it down, do it right, get the question out there, and then come back and have knowledge before the decision of where we're facing. Yeah, it's a tough decision, but why are one healthy thing, the only economy you have is these downtown businesses? We don't have anything else. There's no other business for someone to go to. Yeah, Walmart's going to survive, but how many in our community have that as a living wage job? It's not that. Let's support our smaller businesses, let's support our downtown, let's support our businesses that are family owned, and do this right with a question instead in the fall, and then respond accordingly.
Now,
That
just
would
a
be what I suggest.
couple quick notes about this video that you just saw. One is, I apologize for the fact that the video her mouth does not match her words. It's just the way she talks. No, it's just a video that we've been supplied, or that we were able to grab up from the city. That's number one. And the other thing, which I find fascinating, is I posted 4 videos from that meeting, and 3 of them just sailed on by and people were happy, and it was city councilors talking about how wonderful the sales tax is. We put this one up and we got banned from 2 sites that don't want people to see that video or anything else that we do from now on.
And which I don't understand, because I was pumping my fist at the end of that thing when I first heard it. I thought, that's fantastic. Listen, if you don't understand what it means, first of all, to be in your own business, you're making it by the skin of your teeth until you get to an area where you're comfortable, and even then, you're living on a very small margin. And Lily is correct when she says that this is one area of our economy that's recovering, and if you throw a few more bags of cement on the back of that donkey, who knows what you're going to get as a result of that. And it's I think it's a bad idea. But however, okay, so that is the city's decision, that is the city's option for funding public safety. And on a county level, the public safety, that question continues. Do you have a philosophy or a plan of action as to what to do for countywide public safety?
I'm in a unique spot where not many people have been able to work for public safety in the county and also be in a place to impact policies in the same way. At the same time, I was working as a parole officer when the sheriff's office pulled their dispatch away from the Grants Pass 911 agency. I worked on call for the sheriff's office and dispatch for almost 3 years as a second job to my parole officer job. I had to be on the phone with people out in the extremes of the county where they're asking for help and there's no one to send them, or be on the phone with them for up to an hour as help is coming from who knows where. It's a very helpless feeling knowing that they're in an emergency circumstance and there's no help coming. I don't like that feeling. I'm a fixer. I'm somebody who, when I see a problem, I want to try to find an answer. I'll sit there and brainstorm with you about ways to fix it. So I've been in the role where I've had to hear people's fear, and I don't want to be in that role again. At the same time, the county has made clear they don't want another tax. And until we find a way to find enough economy to support our community, that people have family wage jobs that they can provide for their families first, then we can figure out. Unfortunately, they impact each other. We hear from businesses they don't want to come here unless there's a safe public safety department for them to be safe here. And I heard from some high schoolers a couple of years ago that they didn't feel safe living here anymore and couldn't wait to get done with school so they can move out of the area. A couple of years ago, I went to my 20th high school reunion, and I was amazed how many people had to move away for jobs. They come back and it's beautiful, but they don't feel safe living here. So how do we find that balance? How do we find funding? We are surrounded by natural we have our mining industry, we have minerals, we have trees and forests galore. I think the issue is we can't depend on any one industry. That's what our problem in this community has been in the past, is we've always leaned on one thing. Logging held us through for a while until that court battle.
Until we were barred from using it.
Yeah. And then the booming industry, great, but it was almost superficial because what was sustaining it? There was no real economy behind it.
Right.
And so, now the dependency is on tourism. Well, we can't, I just had company from Arizona stay with me for the last couple weeks, and I asked them about how they enjoyed their shopping without a sales tax, and they said he was taking advantage of it. They were shopping left and right here because they did not have a sales tax before they were driving home to Arizona. And, I don't want to put a crinkle in what industry we do have right now. We have retail, we have tourism, but we need to be able to find something. And I think it's going to come down to, we have city doing their own thing, we have county doing their own thing, we have the schools doing their own thing. We need to partner with the schools to have an industry that is trained, so when kids get out of high school, when they get out of community college, or if they choose to go on, that they have something they can do here that would sustain, jobs. And if we have the workforce willing to stay put, like I said, all of my class had to leave the area to find work. I loved moving back home, but the only way I could have afforded to move home, I had to get a job in government. Now, that was an opportunity for me, but I didn't take a medical route. So I'm in the legal industry. There's medical or there's retail. I've worked in the insurance trade. I would do that again. I think that there's an ability to serve people in anything you do and to have customer service there. But how do we support a whole community that continues to grow?
Now, you have a challenge in front of you that's in front of most politicians, and that is you have access to information which is leading you down a certain path, and you may feel, many politicians do, that the people, the general voting public out there, don't have access to the same kind of information, and perhaps they're making a lunkheaded decision every once in a while. We've said no for a decade we've done that cost-benefit analysis and said, you know what, we realize we're going to suffer somewhat, but we're not going to vote for that. Now that you know that, you know it for sure, we all know it, even though there's some deniers out there, how do you navigate those waters, do what you feel you need to do, and listen to the people?
I'm not going to make any promises of what I will or will not do, because I think you make the best decisions you can as you come upon them, and the circumstances in the community continue to change. In the city voters voted yes for the last couple county levies as far as the overall, and so we made decisions to rent jail beds for the city based on those votes. It's kind of one of those things, but I'm looking at the county now as a whole, and the county has voted no. The county is in a different vote, and I think for now we have to continue to take it just one year at a time. Where's our budget? I think the way to deal with it is not necessarily in new taxes, but it's looking at how do we grow the economy, and that means trying to get the government out of the way so the jobs can come in. We have to be able to have people that are working before you can look at any other solutions.
Yeah, you know what? That's a really good point, and I've talked about this a number of times. When you're talking about economic development, it seems to me that the biggest hindrance to economic development anywhere you go is government, and what are they going to do to you that is going to stop you from starting a business, or is going to put a load on your business and keep it from being prosperous? So that being understood, what would you do? What would your philosophy be going in there? Now, we have a certain amount of economic development funds that come in every year, and I have advocated, and a number of other people have advocated, that they should take that economic development money and say, listen, this money is going for permits and for, to finance the regulations that businesses normally have to incur with the county, and that is on a first come first served basis until it's gone. Well, if people are on the fence as to whether to pull a building permit to build that spec house this year, that gives them an incentive to go, and I think that jump starts the economy. This current board thinks that the best way to do it is to bring in some consultant and give them some report that ends up being, that they end up spending a whole lot of money for, but never actually amounts to anything. What's your philosophy on economic development, and what would you do to inspire and promote business?
There's always, I think, wisdom in seeking wise counsel. And so there are experts in economic development that can give some wise counsel, but then you're also limited to what is your community able to do. I think there's a balance in the two. If you look at what we did on the city council, against the advice of staff, we lowered system development fee charges. And what has come out of that is Winco, Red Robin, there's another Taco Bell going in. I'm thrilled to have Winco coming in because they're a company that's privately owned, they're employee owned. If you are a loyal employee to Winco, you get a good retirement. You have the ability to have a future through that as well. So that's the kind
and it's an awesome store.
Yes. So, it was contrary to everything that we heard, is that you had to raise system development fees in order to continue the infrastructure so that you can bring in businesses. And instead,
how does that, I mean, here, let's get inside that thinking a little bit. How does a higher fee inspire somebody to come in and say, yeah, I want to spend some money over there. I want to jump in and into that community that charges me more money?
Exactly.
It doesn't make any sense.
And that's what we saw is we lowered the fees and we had more permits being pulled. People that in the economy slump had stopped on their projects were able to get back into them. And, you know, there is things happening. I mean, look at All Care, their expansion. And granted, part of that is due to the expansion of the Oregon Health Plan and the Care Oregon type of stuff. But you have a new building, you have a new complex that's coming in, potentially could recruit more professionals into the area and more jobs, which more jobs circulating back into our other retail departments. And, you know, that really our county knows that they travel for shopping. I remember growing up, we'd go to church on Sunday and then we'd do our loop to Costco, we'd come back, you know, it was kind of one of those things that, you know, yes, when I was a kid, you shopped at JCPenney and Montgomery Ward and, you know, Gottschalk's came, but really for the serious stuff, you'd go over to Medford and do some stuff over there. And I know folks that drive from Cave Junction to Medford to get stuff, or even people from the coast that drive over to get the Costco in Medford. So how do we find destinations in our county to support, whether it be building a business in Cave Junction that Grants Pass is traveling to Cave Junction to work, or is continuing to support the Merlin Industrial Park for jobs that can maybe do. It doesn't have to be just in the city, and I think that's why the current economic development plan actually finally makes sense, is because you have both the city and the county willing to work together to say, I'm willing to set aside what's best for just my agency and look what's best for the community as a whole, realizing that if the county has more jobs, that impacts the city. If the city has more jobs, that impacts the county. But you can't do that alone. You also have to help government get out of the way. And that's where you make sure the fees or the customer service isn't all about saying no. It's how do we get you through this permit job. You can't just eliminate permits. It's state required. It's just going to be a part of how things are. But you can help people get through the process so that when they come in, it's not a months-long ordeal, that they are able to do it in a safe manner and it's cost efficient. And I think that's what I think public service needs to be, is that in every area that we have, every department in the county, are we doing what we're meant to do in the best way that we're serving the public?
If there was a way to figure out how you think that you might be compatible with others that would run for the office. Mm-hmm. One is, you know that if you win, you won't be working with Cheryl Walker because she's not only not declared, but you both can't win. So if it was Lily Morgan and Lily Morgan, you might get a 10 and saying, well, we're perfectly compatible. One can only hope.
I don't know, we'd argue a lot.
Yes. Now, the other positions that are coming open on the city council or for the mayor is the mayor. His position is coming open. Don't know what he's going to do. Mark Gatlin, Ken Hannum, and you. So
and actually Dan DeYoung.
Oh, and Dan DeYoung, right. So just a real quick view. If you were to somehow pair up, there's two positions coming open with the mayor. On a 1 to 10 scale, how well would you guys get along? These are quick questions.
Well, that's not an easy question, though.
It's also very political, too.
It is. That's the kind of show this is.
I find that no matter who I'm working with, I'm going to have to get along, and I will work to get along with that person, because it's not about us. It's about the people we're serving. And so we have to set our egos aside and get a job done. I think that I don't even know who's going to be in those positions, but I do think the county and city can communicate better on things that we can work together on. We have multiple things that are done in both agencies. I've always wondered, are there things that we can eliminate between the two that one could provide for both, or vice versa, instead of having duplicate services throughout the agencies? But, you know,
Well, let's try this one. I'm interrupting you slightly. Let's try this
That's
one. Of the people who could potentially run from the city council, that'd be Dan DeYoung, that'd be the mayor, that would be Ken Hannum, and that would be Mark Gatlin. Of those people, with whom do you think that you could get along most easily?
So who would I like to see run for another commissioner spot?
Yes.
I would love to see Dan DeYoung run. I know Dan's in hot water right now over his stance on the sales tax, but the reality is Dan owned a business for 35 years and did what we say we're supposed to do. If you grew up in this town, he went off and served in the Navy, he came back and he was successful in business here. From his standpoint, he did what he thought was best in putting something to the voters to decide on. And I have to tell you, Dan and I do not agree on everything, and I've been chewed out by him. He's called me up and said, what the heck was I thinking about a vote? But I find that at the end of the day, we respect each other very well, and we can work together well and try to come to a solution. And he's willing to have the conversations. And I enjoy working with Dan. And you'll see us after a city council meeting in the parking lot talking for a couple hours sometimes.
Now, speaking of agreement and disagreement, you work in the criminal justice system, and the other day, Channel 10, KTVL, put out a report having to do with elevated crime in the county. And as a part of this video, the sheriff speculates that we're having more homicides in the county because of the lack of funding. And let me play this clip for you, and I'd like to get your response.
Josephine County District Attorney's Office has its hands full right now. Chief Deputy DA Lisa Turner says her office is currently dealing with at least 9 homicide cases.
More than normal than probably the years past. Then the last couple years, things have been elevating with regards to the number of homicides our office is having to handle.
Turner says there's also been an increase in shootings, but some residents were surprised to hear of violent crime in their area.
Whatever happened to them at the lake, that was a shock. Because, you don't hear about things like that here. That's pretty bizarre. I mean, we know what crime's all about. We're from Las Vegas, So this is a shock that this would happen here.
Josephine County Sheriff Dave Daniel says he's concerned as homicides continue to go up throughout the year.
We're showing a trend, I think, here in Josephine County where things are not getting better, they're getting worse. Largely, I think that's due to, funding and the lack of presence that used to be here in Josephine County.
Daniel says cases are going uninvestigated and crime is on the rise.
We're doing everything we can. We're trying to communicate more with the citizens, get buy-in from them in the form of neighborhood watches and community watches. These are little things that can be preventative. There's that people can do.
Ballard and Sibley will be back in court for a grand jury hearing on November 2nd. Covering your news, Megan Allison, News 10.
What's your impression of that piece there?
As I said before, I was a parole officer. I was a 911 dispatcher, or maybe I didn't say that, but I worked in 911 for 5 years, and I was a sheriff's reserve deputy. And as a reserve deputy, I stood crime scene security on several homicides we had in our county that year, and it seemed like there was 10 homicides in 10 months. Unfortunately, this year we've reached those numbers sooner than we had back then, and I'm going to go to what evidence shows. And looking at the city, when we had a cut in the jail wasn't lodging felonies and misdemeanors. And the police were spinning their wheels, essentially, constantly chasing the same people. A lot of the lower level crimes increased drastically. Misdemeanors, people would tag a place, tag the next place, tag the next place. I heard stories from Walmart where someone would fill a grocery cart, walk out. They get stopped, they get a ticket to appear in court, they toss the ticket on the ground, 2 hours later be caught filling this cart to steal again. And what we saw is when we rented the jail beds and said we want those crimes to be lodged in the jail, they were able to show the 6 months before we rented beds and the 6 months after that there was actually a decrease by 500 arrests because they were able to stop some of the repetitive stuff. And also for people that were fugitives that were kind of hiding out in the area thinking they would not get arrested, they were able to ship out fugitives to other areas. So it actually, by having a full system, decreased arrest because there was accountability. And I think that one thing I see in my job is that we still work with people who live throughout the county. Whether or not the crime's happening in the city, where they reside is all the way through the county. And so we're still dealing with them in our work with community corrections. I do believe that what a lack of sheriff's office, or more importantly, what we saw at the town hall meeting in Cape Junction the other night, where they have people that aren't, it's misdemeanor stuff, and the state police isn't allowed to lodge misdemeanors. The sheriff's office isn't lodging misdemeanors. Only the city is, because they're paying extra for those beds. Is you're having repeat stuff and things tend to escalate. If there's not, it's kind of like a kid. I got away with that, I'm going to get away with more. So I think if you study behavioral patterns, that there's evidence that without accountability, behavior can increasingly get worse.
Well, one of the things that your putative predecessor said when she was running was that she hadn't made up her mind, that she really had her doubts about whether or not it was a good idea to keep pressing for another property tax, and that she needed to think it through. The first day she was in office, before she even went to her meeting, she was in the hallway with one of the TV stations. I was there listening, and she said, "Oh yeah, property tax is the only way to go." First day. So knowing what your background is and how strongly you feel about this, I respect that. Couldn't people generally assume, how close to reality would they be, in assuming that you're probably going to be a strong proponent of more property taxes?
I've supported property tax in the past because I've seen the lack of criminal justice, but I think that it's also clear that our county doesn't want another tax at this time. We have other things that they need to worry about, and that's putting meals on the table and making sure they have a house over their head. And I don't think that property tax is the answer. It does only tax one. You know, in reality, sales tax is the most efficient as far as across the board, but it'll never work to have a sales tax for one community when it's surrounded by communities that do not have it. The only way a sales tax would work is if it was statewide, and Oregon's made that clear. That is not going to happen. And so you have to look at other revenue sources. You know, we have a high income tax. You know, I wish that were changed. It can't. But right now, I have a job, and I'm single, and I do not have children, and I rent a house. I am in the highest tax bracket, and that's my contribution. And through my rent, I help contribute towards the property tax of where I'm living. It is what it is. That's where my taxes go, is into income tax. I think for right now, when it comes to the county, we have to wait and see. We have to try to continue to get as much local control of our natural resources as we can. That allows us to have any other revenue sources coming in, and we have to find a way to bring jobs in. And if we can do that, then we can find a way to say, all right, one idea that was suggested is, why doesn't the government partner with a nonprofit that can take donations? If people want to contribute towards a public safety, or if they want to contribute towards a juvenile system, that they have a nonprofit donation opportunity to do that would fund those programs.
That's a good idea. Why not have that option out there? That way, if people voluntarily want to do it, they can.
Yeah.
You know, even though that recent poll said that we're the 9th poorest community, or at least Grants Pass is, it was taking into account income. It was not taking into account savings of retired folks.
Correct.
That's right.
We have such a disparity between very wealthy and very poor in our community, and we have to find something that's equitable to everybody. We don't want to take everything from those who have worked their whole lives to save up for their retirement. That's not our job, to take their kids' inheritance. And at the same time, we have to provide a way for people that are not able to contribute their part to have the job so they can do their own part. For instance, recently we were talking about advanced finance district fees for improving sidewalks over on Grandview. Well, I know of 2 properties over there that the developers could not build houses on it because between the advanced finance district and the system development charges, they would make no profit if they built a home on that property, and it wasn't worth it for them. But wouldn't it be better for the city if there were houses there that are now paying towards property taxes?
That's right.
And so,
no, that's absolutely correct. I know people who have had homes in an area where the city was expanding into that area, and all of a sudden they get hit with like 40 grand or something like that. Well, the developer has to suck that in too when he's going to build a spec house in a particular area, and that adds to the cost of things, and it makes it a lot less likely to happen.
So for now, what I think would be more beneficial to our county is if there's a business that comes in and they're paying their portion. If there's housing that can be developed in certain areas, go with what taxes you have on the books and support it with other economic ways. Don't increase the taxes if you don't have to.
Well, one of the things that's come up in the past that a number of people have mentioned is that we occasionally see people come into office, good intentions, and then when they're in that atmosphere where they're rubbing elbows with the same people every day, they slowly begin to change and they adopt some of the attitudes for cooperation's sake of the people around them. So if Keith Heck was elected again, he's a very strong proponent of getting out there and having higher property taxes. Definitely Simon Hare absolutely is there. The finance director is there. The assessor is there. Even the clerk is there. You'd be surrounded by people that you want to cooperate with, you want to get along with them, and as admirable as your stand was against standing up against everybody in the city staff and your fellow councilors, do you have any fears or any feelings that once you get into a situation where you're kind of half hanging back, that they're going to suck you in?
Well, there's always influence of peers, but if there were ever an example of where that circumstance would be relevant is right now with the sales tax. And, we should be careful not to just call it a sales tax because it's a sales and service tax. So if you call a service repair person to your house, you would also be paying a tax on that service. It's not just a sales tax. But it is something that is going to fund my very industry where I work. It would make my life better to know the jail is fully funded and that the district attorney's office is able to prosecute the crimes that are done in our community. I am in the industry that would benefit from this sales tax, but it was not in the best interest of our community, and that's what I have to represent.
That's admirable. That's admirable.
Yep.
Well, and I like I said, Dale, I don't know what decisions we'll face in the future because, yes, history is usually a predictor of future behavior. It's kind of one of those things that with me on the property tax in the city residents choose to have the level of service that they do. They know the property tax, they know what that takes. One benefit the property tax offers at the city levy is that it's deductible on your state and federal income taxes. And so there is some benefit to that. Now, granted, it's not enough, but what they're getting out of the services, you see city residents wanting to pay for that. You wouldn't have those same benefits with a sales tax, but that is not right now what I think the county is wanting or needing. Right now, they're saying we can't afford to do more, and so I think that's what we have to see what happens for now. We have to go with, all right, we've tried the levies. Let's see what happens. Let's just play it out. And now, granted, the last levy was citizen initiated anyhow. That wasn't commissioners that put that one on the ballot, even if they supported or not. It was, signatures gathered and stuff like that. So you never know where those votes are going.
Well, hold on for just a second while Mike and I talk about you behind your back. Mike, I like Lily. I admire the stand that she took, even though we got in a lot of trouble for playing back her video. Boy. But I like what she's saying. I appreciate her attitude about this. I would like to believe that she would stand up in the same way to those who are saying, oh, no, nothing but higher property taxes. We got to only do it that way. That's our only option. I want to believe that she would say to them, no, wait, listen to the people. What's your feeling about her? She's not really listening.
Yes. No, I said that, when I saw her speaking out against the sales tax there, and I thought, okay, she is concerned about the right things. Now, clearly, I'm always concerned about what's going to happen when people get into office with a bunch of other people that don't, that are not towing the same line that you are. it is human nature to want to get along. And of course, if you're the only one, you're one vote, and you may be able to influence people with a good argument. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to affect any kind of change because you're one person.
Now, Lily, before we go, and we do eventually go, believe it or not, despite what people say, do you have something, one additional message? She's got 10, Mike, but do you have one additional message? Oh, I should have said this. Now's your chance. Here's your I should have said this moment.
Well, I believe that we have good people in this community, and it's, taking people from our community to come up with the ideas and finding a way to listen to what all those needs are. Marijuana is a strong component in our community, and being that I work in law enforcement, never would have thought in a million years that I would say that there's value in working with marijuana. I still have great concerns about our youth being exposed to that, and there's a reason why there's age restrictions, and making sure that we're not advertising to our kids. But at the same time, there is extremely shown medicinal purposes. They have the CBD, they have some of the other elements of marijuana that have been shown to have a medicinal effect. And there is a need across the state to have an organized industry that would provide what grows so readily here to be spread throughout the rest of the state. And if we had a way of saying, okay, how do we do this in a way that we are providing medical marijuana to dispensaries that is free of pesticides, herbicides, GMOs, all that other kind of stuff, the mold, the mildews, and providing it so that we have an industry in place that when it goes legal federally, we're the industry to provide that, yet at the same time, not putting all our eggs in one basket, that we have other industries so that our kids growing up have more to hope for than just a life of marijuana production. We have to take into consideration that in our community, we have people that are strongly opposed to it. We have people that are strongly for it. We have people that are strongly for law enforcement. We have those that are strongly against it. And we have to be willing to listen to all of those and find a way to work together. I hope to be that person. I know I'm not going to please everybody, and I'm not going to try, but I am going to listen, and I'm going to make the best choice that I can, what I believe is right for the best circumstance at that time.
Well, let me wrap up in saying that that's the end of tonight's show. We will be on at 8 o'clock, because that's when the announcement's going to be made about this vote, about the, you already know what the answer is going to be, but we'll be there live with the county clerk giving you the answers. And what we're going to try to do there live is as soon as we have the answer, we're going to try to reach Lily. She'll be out of town. She's at an international bowling convention or something like that.
I wish something that exciting.
And we're going to try to reach her to get her reaction as the one that stood up for all the rest of us. Thank you very much, Lily Morgan. Mike, you got anything more to say, bud?
Well, you know what? I like the stance that if you create a good economy in this county, then you have more fertile ground for a potential property tax levy at some point down the road. And you look in areas where they have plenty of tax money to spend and they're very affluent. The only reason why they're able to get the tax money that they do is because the people in that county are doing well. And so concentrate on the conditions that foster things doing well, and then everything else will follow. I think we've been pursuing these things in the wrong sequence. So I'm thankful that at least now we know one person running, and we're going to interview a number of them. One person running is an advocate for the proper sequencing here.
Nice. And I say let's wait 4 years. Let's just give ourselves a moratorium for 4 years so that we can all simmer down, just take a little break from this, and then come back when things are more prosperous. If you can't do it, you can't make any difference in prosperity in 4 years, you got to resign from the office.